Hi, I'm Chelsea and welcome to Beginning Photoshop for Photographers. In this video series, my goals are not only to teach you the basics of Photoshop, but to work right alongside you on the same pictures so that you can get hands-on experience by editing pictures that you're probably going to run across when you're editing your own photos. So I'll have portraits and landscapes and all of the basics, and you'll know how to edit them. You'll find when using Photoshop that there are many ways to achieve the same task. I hear all of the time when I make a Photoshop video, couldn't you have done it this way? Couldn't you have done it that way? And yes, but in these videos I'm going to try to find the simplest way that is also the most effective. The first thing that I want you to do is figure out how to retrieve your photo file. So go to sdp.io/ps1 and I'll have all of the pictures there and instructions on how to get them into Photoshop. Now that you know how to open your files, make sure that you have your Lesson 1 photo open, which is this cute photo of this little saw-whet owl here. Before we start working on this picture here, I want to show you all of the different components of your workspace, which is pretty simple. You have your menu bar up here, your options bar is right below it. This is your toolbox, which we'll go over in just a moment, and you have your palettes here with your layer palette, and your status bar is down here, and this is your canvas that your picture's on. Before we do anything else, let's go to Window, hover over Workspace, and then select Photography for your workspace. And then we should all be looking at the same thing. That just makes sure that we're all looking at the same tools and menus. So let's start going over tools. This first tool is your Move tool, and that just means that you can grab something and move it. There's nothing to move right now. It's telling me that. Your next tool is your Rectangular Marquee tool, and that just allows you to select an area in the shape of a rectangle. And now that you have something selected, you could use your Move tool. Probably want to do this along with me, and you could move this piece if you wanted to, though it doesn't look very good. So let's undo that. I want you to press Control-Z, and that's how you undo. Keyboard shortcuts are going to save you a lot of time, so I'm going to encourage you to use them during this video. If for some reason you can't do that, you can go to Edit and do Redo and Undo here. And it also tells you the keyboard shortcut if you forget. Now to deselect, you can do Control-D, or you can go to Select and click Deselect. Whenever you see a little arrow in the bottom corner, that means that there's another drop-down menu within your tool, and there's an elliptical marquee tool, a single row, and a single column, and they just do the same thing but in different shapes. So you can try that out, and then to get rid of it, you can press Control-D again. So your next tool is your Lasso tool, and this just allows you to do freehand selection. So if you wanted to try to select around the eye, you can do that. If you go to select the other eye, it's going to undo your first selection. So if you want to add to your selection, press down Shift, and you can see a little plus sign comes up, and it allows you to add to your selection. If you want to take away from your selection, press Alt. So if you went too far, you can go like that, and it takes away from your selection. Once again, if you, for some reason, can't use keyboard shortcuts, you can also go up here. This is selecting, this is adding to your selection, and this is taking away from your selection. Under your Lasso tool, you can do Polygonal Lasso, which allows you to make straight lines. So press down, and then you can either make your line freehand, or you can press Shift and it makes a straight line or a perfectly diagonal line if you want to, let's say, make a triangle. So let's try that. And when you get to your end spot, press Control and make your final click, and then you'll have your selected area. So press Control-D to deselect that. Another helpful tool for photography would be your Magnetic Lasso, which just guides you when you select. So let's try it. Try selecting along the owl's head now. And you can see that even if you miss the edge of the owl, it kind of guides you as you select. But it's not always precise, especially if there's not a lot of contrast. To end your selection, press Control, and you'll have your selected area. I'm going to press Control-D and deselect that area. Your next tool is your Quick Selection tool and your Magic Wand tool. So let's do your Magic Wand tool first. Select it, and it's going to select everything that's a common color. So try to select your pupil of the owl here. And I'm going to press Shift to select the other one as well. Now everything's selected within that area. You can do whatever you want with it. So let's say I wanted to paint it a different color. You do that. It doesn't look good, but I'm just showing you that anything within that selected area can be worked on and anything outside of it won't be impacted. So let's press Control. And if you want to go back multiple times, you can press Control Alt Z, and that allows you to delete multiple things like my selections as well. You could also go up here to your history and you could go all the way back to the beginning. We haven't done much, so it's not showing you. Or you can go back to any point in your selections and revisit them. All right, so under where your magic wand tool is, you have your quick selection tool as well, and that just allows you to paint a selected area. It's also not always completely precise. You can see if you drag it along here, it's going to select some of your owl. But in further lessons, I'll show you how to refine your selecting. So I'm going to press Control D and deselect. Next is your cropping tool. You have other features under your cropping tool, but these aren't really practical in photography, so I'm not going to delve too deeply into them now. Let's just select your crop tool, and you can see that you can crop your picture. And a really cool feature is if you go up here, select this, you can crop using guidelines that use the rule of thirds, the golden ratio, or the golden spiral, which is useful when you're cropping. It helps you make a better composition. Let's do the golden ratio. And I'm going to turn it so that his eyes are even. You can crop it however you like. This would be a good time for you to play around with this feature. And I press Enter, and it's cropped the picture. Let's move on. Next is the eyedropper tool. I like this tool. Any part of the picture that you select, it takes a color sample and puts it in your foreground in your color palette here. Once you do that, you could paint with it, or you could do numerous things. You could fill in an area that's missing. It's very helpful. You also have your pencil tool, which also draws but has harder edges. I'm going to press Control Z to undo that. And your color replacement tool, which I think is so cool because I can pick a color and then you can color over something in your photo and make his eyes go from gold to blue. Isn't that cool? So as you can see, it's not perfectly selected. There are some parts that weren't painted blue and it doesn't look that clean. In later lessons, I'll teach you how to use these selection tools that I showed you to better select just the iris and make sure that's the only part that gets colorized. But right now we're just kind of breezing through the tools. So we're going to move on to the mixer brush here. And this blends just the existing colors in the picture together. I don't imagine you're going to be using that much in your pictures. The next tool I use all of the time. It's the clone stamp tool. When you select the clone stamp tool, I want you to try this. Press Alt and click down right in the middle of the eye. Move your brush to the middle of the owl's head here, and then paint. And you are painting a third eyeball onto your owl. If you want a bigger brush, you can use your right bracket, which is right below your plus sign on your keyboard, and that's going to increase the size of your brush. If you think that this looks a bit hard, you can go to your opacity here, and you can turn it down to, let's say, about 50–60%, and you can blend it in and make it look more natural. That's a really cool tool. And you probably won't be adding third eyes to things, but it works well if you're filling in parts of a background or taking a bracelet off of your model's wrist, something like that. You also have a pattern stamp tool right below your clone tool. And that just fills everything in with the pattern that's selected here. Probably not as useful as the clone stamp tool. The next tool is your history brush. And this can also be really useful. So select your history brush, go into your history, and let's see, we'll go back to when he had yellow eyes and select it, and then go back to where we are at the clone stamp here. And then when you use it, everything that you brush will go back to the snapshot you took. So you took a snapshot of the owl when it didn't have 3 eyes or blue eyes, and now everything you paint with your history brush here is going to look like that snapshotted picture. So it would either make his eyes yellow, because that's how it was before, or it would delete the third eye. I'm going to undo this by pressing Control Alt Z a few times and getting back to those 3 blue eyes. That's a cool tool. Let's go to your eraser tool next. This does what you would expect. It erases to the background color, which is this color here. Blue is your foreground, white is your background. Your eraser is going to erase white. So I'll delete those. And your other eraser tool is your background eraser tool, which completely erases to the back of the canvas. Undo that with Control Z. Your magic eraser tool, you click an area and it just deleted all of the white or cream. Next is your gradient tool. This does what you would think, it adds a gradient. So I'm going to quickly just select part of the background so you can see. It's sloppy, but now I'll select gradient and use the tool, and now he has a funky background. I'm going to press Control Alt Z and get rid of that. Your paint bucket tool just fills in any solid area that you select. You can try that. And these are very useful tools. You have your blur tool, which you can use to hand blur the background. Mine's already blurred. Let's press Control Plus, and that's how you zoom in with your keyboard shortcut. Things are a bit noisy here. I'm going to press Control Minus next to plus and just zoom out a little bit. I'm going to make it bigger with my right bracket, and then you can see that I'm just making this area blurry. So you can do this with me just to get an idea of how the tool works. I can't imagine that I'd actually want to make this part of the photo blurry, but the background's already blurry, so I couldn't really demonstrate it there. This is the sharpen tool, which sharpens an area, the opposite. This picture is already sharp, so if you over sharpen something, it can start to look really fake. So I'll sharpen this eye here and you can see what I mean. The way to make it look better, I'm going to press Control Z and unsharpen, is to adjust your strength here. So you could do 17% sharpness and it would look a bit more natural. And your smudge tool will just smudge stuff. Again, I don't think we're going to be using that all that much. Next, you have your dodge and burn tool, which definitely pertain to photography. And if you're a darkroom junkie like me, you probably are using the very basic tools like these in the darkroom. It's a lot easier here in Photoshop. So dodge is going to make things lighter, and it's important that you know the range that you'll be making lighter. If I make shadows lighter, I'm going to be bringing out the shadows, let's say around his eyes, or bringing out the shadows in his beak. If I make highlights lighter, I could bring out its feathers far too much. So let me undo those. And if you want to burn, you'll be making things darker. So let's say I want to make the midtones darker. I could make his eyes darker, or I could make the shadows darker and maybe make his beak pop out a bit more, or make around his eyes darker. Those will be useful tools, and I'll definitely go into those more in other lessons. And the sponge tool, you can desaturate or saturate. So if you desaturate color, you'd be making your picture black and white. Let's see, let's put the flow all the way up to 100%. And I'm going to press the space bar, which lets you drag with this hand. Oops. And I'm changing this tree that was in the background to black and white, and it makes it a bit less distracting. I could make his eyes black and white, which I don't want to do. I could make his feathers black and white and spot color the picture. And to make that more precise, you want to use these selection tools that I showed you earlier and select the area that you want to be black and white before you use these tools. If you want to saturate, you still stay in the sponge tool and you go up here and click saturate, and then you can make the eyes more blue or his feathers brighter. I'm going to press Control Alt Z and undo those changes. You have your pen tool, which I don't think we'll be using any of these under here. Your text tool, in case you want to put an inspirational message over your pictures. I'll probably show you how to do that. Your path selection tool, and you can make shapes, which when you make it will just be filled with your foreground color. Control Z. And your hand tool, which will move everything around on your screen, which I showed you. You can just press spacebar and use that shortcut. And then of course you have your zoom tool here, but I showed you that keyboard shortcut too, which is Control plus or minus. Okay, so I realize that that is a ton of information, but I think it's better that we just went over everything and got you somewhat familiar with your workspace before moving on. So let's move on to your next lesson and get to editing a picture.